Hello, 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 88 BC Africa. I am so excited for today. I am featuring the dynamic Philani Sangweni as part of our Founder Spotlight. Yeah, it's a new series that we started a few weeks ago. And the first feature was on Instagram. So we did an Instagram live with Kellen Abrahams. She's one of our new female founders, data scientist extraordinaire, and really building what I believe is going to be a very successful startup. So Philani, yeah, watch that space. And then we had Soraya Williams, who's an alumnus, and she has just been doing incredible things, especially in the Cape Town fashion space. This year, or during the pandemic, she pivoted, and well, that pivot is paying off big time. So we chatted to her, got to know her a bit better. And today, guys, I am excited. Philani joins me. He's the founder and CEO at Entrepreneurs for Entrepreneurs, which is a VC fund. And he's an experienced entrepreneur. And this is what I like, because we don't see this very often in the South African ecosystem, is entrepreneurs actually going out on a limb and taking the lead in supporting founders. And for us, Philani, it is female founders, but I know for you guys, it's across the board. So guys, Philani is an experienced entrepreneur and a venture capitalist, and he's passionate about supporting innovation and technology-focused entrepreneurs. I love that. I think we need more of that. And yes, the South African ecosystem is certainly very different from when I started 16 years ago. So happy, really happy that you've taken this bull by the horns, Philani. Guys, he's also, as I've mentioned, an experienced entrepreneur, but he's got a management consulting background, and he's been an executive in various industries. So I am going to hand over to Philani to tell us a little bit more about himself. So tell us about your career and how did you make your way into the VC space? And in terms of the ecosystem, why the VC space specifically?
Yeah, thank you, Antoinette, for that introduction. That sounds like someone else's, but in any case, yeah. So I consider myself a normal sort of township boy who's been presented extraordinary opportunities over the years. So I grew up in a place called Guamashu in Durban. And even during high school, I'd always been fascinated by business. So I knew I wanted to study something as that relates to business. And during my time, which is in the late 90s when I was in high school, the one thing that everyone drove you to study was accounting, because CAs typically are the ones who run large corporates in South Africa. So I went and studied that. Didn't particularly enjoy it, but finished it nonetheless. And instead of going to do my articles and continuing that route, I went into management consulting with a company called Accenture. So the thinking always was I would go into audit in order to learn about as many industries as possible, because you rotate client to client, and then one day become an investor into various industries. So I've always had a dream of being an investor in some shape or form. Although when I was growing up, a lot of Black entrepreneurs of the time were in sort of private equity or investment holding structures. So if you think about Shanduka, if you think about Zico, if you think about Tebe Investments, so that's what I suppose would inspire us during that time. And then I went into Accenture, I spent 2 years initially, went and started my first entrepreneurial business, which was in the consulting space, technology consulting, ran that for 3 years, experiencing some challenges, and then went back to Accenture I call it my fallback plan all the time. So second time around, I deliberately, because first time I'd worked primarily in financial services. Second time around, I deliberately tried to work across industries to gain that experience that I'd wanted. Leading into mid-2014, after spending some time in Nigeria with Accenture, deciding that I want to take the plunge again. So with the support of Accenture, I started another business called Stratton Consulting at the time, to focus on suppose technology-enabled transformation projects, primarily in the defense and aerospace sector. Did that. Proved to be probably one of my biggest learning experiences. Merged with another firm to create a current technology consulting firm, which I'm still a non-executive director of, which allowed me to join Edulone as their COO. They became Fundi when I was there. And in my time at Fundi, part of my role, I was leading innovation and product development. And they approved a corporate venture fund, which allowed us to invest in edtech and fintech startups to help our innovation roadmap, get that implemented much sooner. So that was my reintroduction to my original dream of being an investor, and my introduction to startup investing, as it were. And I quickly realized that I was enjoying that part of my role a lot more than the normal CEO part. And at the same time, when I was doing an executive MBA program, which spent a lot of time helping you think about who you are and what you want to do. And as part of that journey, I realized that I wanted to do this full time. So, for other reasons as well, I left Fundi end of 2017 to embark on this journey. So started, really spending my time while involved in my technology consulting business on a part-time basis, but spending a lot of my time mentoring startups, mobilizing investment where I could. That led me into co-founding Acro Accelerate, which was funded by the SSME Fund. And during that time, I reconnected and also connected to new partners or friends who became the E4E partners that you know now. An incredible set of individuals who've done amazing things on the business front. Aisha Pando, Frederick Goena, as well as Bas Hochschenbach, and a guy called Neil Watson came together initially to do angel investments and just provide a platform for mentorship, experienced entrepreneurs mentoring upcoming entrepreneurs in the South African space. That quickly became a fund because the SSME Fund then said, "We're happy with the work you've done with the accelerator. Do you have a team?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I have a fantastic team, probably the most fantastic in the country." So we put in our proposal, and that led us into a process of formalizing our angel investor structure into a formal fund in June this year. So that's a very condensed sort of history.
I love the evolution and how your journey constantly brought you back to that initial dream that you had. Love that. And then the second piece to that is, again, and we say this to our female founders all the time, is that it comes down to your team. It comes down to your people space. I think for most entrepreneurs, it's probably the most daunting space in your business, but it is the most important space, right? And I am super impressed by your team. I mean, like you've mentioned, pretty dynamic that you have there. So well done. What is the best piece of career advice that you've received to date?
Best piece of career advice is, I suppose, growing up in consulting initially is do the role you have now to the best of your abilities and start performing that role at the level of the expectation of the next role. So typically, the consulting world is every 2-3 years you are for promotion. So I think it was always a case of, if you're an analyst or a consultant or a manager, we must perform at the next level perform the current role as if you're already getting paid for the next one, to demonstrate your abilities. And I suppose reflecting back on that now, particularly with the type of team I'm leading, I'm trying to learn and at least always show up at E4E, at the level at which we see E4E, say 3 to 5 years from now. So as a leader, I'm trying to learn how to and constantly put into action every day, me leading E4E as if E4E is is a multi-fund firm, so more than one fund under management. Fund one is 400 to 500 million instead of the 135 where we are now. So the idea is, don't be content with being able really to do things at your current level. You must always be looking to strive to the next one constantly. So that's the only way that growth then comes.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And I think, I don't know if you bump into this, Philani, as you guys review pitch decks and proposals. But in the South African space, I think a lot of founders probably practice the be in the moment or the be present. They take it to another level, right? Because they are content to be where they're at right now. And so I think that's why you need accelerator programs, you need funds to just push them a little bit. And I think with our female founders, they'll probably tell you that it's not always the most gentlest push, but we do push them out of their comfort zone. So I love that. I love that. And to our female founders listening, I think that is so important, especially given the digital transformation that is happening on so many fronts. And COVID was obviously a catalyst for tons of the transformation that we're seeing right now. So how are you positioning yourself? You might be running your business for 10 years, for 12 years, but what are you doing that can optimize your digital transformation so you can be a participant and not just a consumer of the fourth industrial revolution? So 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where do you see yourself? Where do you see your business in this new normal? So I absolutely love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I think there's a sorry, just to add something. I think there's a balance around being in the moment and executing now, but also having another eye into the future. And you find extremes locally. Other guys are too much into the future, not executing now, and other people are too much here. So, but that's where people like you and us then come in to help find that balance, hopefully for them, to help them find that balance.
Oh, and I have to echo that. And I think a lot of times, I'm not sure if you see this as well, but I see it with a lot of founders, and I've seen this year at home. I've seen it in Uganda and Kenya as well. Is that a lot of founders lack balance. I think at times we become so consumed with our hairy, audacious goal that we live in that future. We live in wanting to get it done now, And if I could say anything to my 26-year-old self, 16 years ago, Philani, it would be, take it easy, baby girl. Take it easy, slow down. You don't have to accomplish it all today, And who do you want to accomplish it all for anyway today? Is it so people will see that you're doing the things? Or are you doing this for yourself and pacing yourself so that you are building a business that lasts? And I suppose it's a bit of a contrast because, especially in the startup space, we do say build fast and build to last, move quickly. You're agile, so move quickly. But I think it is taking the necessary steps to ensure that you're building a solid business. And for me, especially having lived through a liquidation and having thought at the time that I was building something that would last, I spent 12 years on it, and having to liquidate it was hard. It was tough. It was really hard. And spending 12 years on it at that point was like, what? It was my baby. It was everything. So the one lesson that came out of that, one of the big ones, which I share with female founders all the time now, is that your business is not your baby. So as much as you're putting in the time, as much as you are dedicating yourself and your almost every hour to it, you have to come at it strategically. And I think it's that strategic approach that helps with pacing yourself. It's being methodical and planning that ensures that you're building to last, even though you're moving fast. Yeah.
100%. I couldn't say that any better, actually.
So what is your favorite quote and why?
They evolve, right? So they change over time. I don't have one to last a lifetime. I think one that has resonated with me, something I saw on Friday. And I was actually listening to a podcast, and I don't remember which one. It says something like the qualities, um, the, the qualities of getting there are the qualities of being there, right? And so the idea is what you're going through now, how you react to it, and how you sort of apply yourself and learn in the now is this exactly the same qualities you're gonna need to be there. So for instance, if you're trying to be a CEO, I think maybe it's similar. There isn't it resonates. It's similar to the advice I was given. So if you want to be a CEO of a 500 million rand business, the qualities of getting there. So acting like a 500 million rand business CEO now are the same qualities you're going to need when you're running a 500 million rand business. Therefore, you better start executing those qualities or living those qualities right now. And also the flip side to that is, maybe not the flip side, another way to look at that is the challenges that you're going through at the moment, feeling like you're not sure whether you're going left or right, the sleepless nights, the lack of balance, are the qualities that are the things that you need to get over for you to earn the right to be a 500 million rand CEO. So for me that really resonates, because I think we very much always say that when I have X, I'll be like this. When I have Y, I'll be like this. Whereas you need to be that now for Y to come, I suppose, for Y to manifest itself into your life. And here I'm talking not just from a pure grunt work, working hard perspective. I'm talking about, mindfulness. If you can find your understanding self now, and find a way to deal with the issues of life as they throw themselves at you now, you'll be able to deal with even bigger issues at a 500 million rand size company. How you deal with your family now, how you deal with the people you love at the moment, is teaching you to do that even better at that level. So I'm probably not one who subscribes to the notion that, screw everything right now, let me just focus on one thing, and when I get there, I'll sort out the other stuff. The qualities are required right now. So that's really my favorite quote right now. And I don't remember who it was from, but I was listening to a podcast on Friday, and it's set in my brain for the entire weekend.
That's pretty powerful. And here's why for me, Philani, because so many times, and I love the fact that you mentioned mindfulness, and I think there is a level of self-awareness that needs to come with behaving like the person that you see yourself as in the future, right? Behaving as that person now. There's a level of self-awareness that comes with that, and understanding that I'm not there yet. I have a couple of things that I need to do. So I need to work with a coach on a few things. I need to pull in a life coach or a business coach. I might have to go for therapy, to deal with a couple of things. So I think there's a level of self-awareness and vulnerability that comes with that as you prepare to make your way there. And I think there's a very different generation, I believe, of African founders that's coming to the fore now that are extremely self-aware, that have a heightened level of EQ. So the fake it till you make it is out the window. We are vulnerable enough to say, I'm not there yet, but I aspire to be that person. So I'm going to put in the work now. I'm going to do what I need to do now. So be it that I work with a life coach to deal with my self-limiting beliefs, be it that I work with therapists to get over some trauma that I experienced in the past. And I think especially for female founders, GBV is really real. For a lot of founders, I mean, I was in an abusive relationship, so that meant that I had a lot of issues that I had to deal with. Whilst running my business, I had to get over and through a lot of personal stuff. And if I didn't, it would have hampered my growth. So it's so important.
So the qualities that you used to get over all of that are the qualities that you're using now to be great at what you're trying to do, right? So, and that's precisely the point, is that you just need that self-awareness to know what qualities you need now versus the future and how they relate.
Yeah, and I always say this to our founders, it's not the easiest work. So this type of work that you're going to do is not the easiest work that you'll do. You're going to have to face some of your demons. You're going to have to look yourself in the mirror and go, oh, is that really me? But it's the best work that you'll ever do. So I love that. Absolutely love it. What do you do for fun?
So
You have time.
that's an interesting question. I grew up doing martial arts, so I enjoy sort of fighting type sports. So I've done MMA, just not this year, obviously, because of COVID. I grew up doing Kyokushinkai karate. So I still enjoy that. I'm looking to go back. I actually try a different form of martial arts starting next year called Krav Maga. I find that it calms me down quite well. And I spend a lot of time this year at least doing CrossFit. And I find that because I enjoy lifting very heavy weights, I used to do powerlifting. I think it related to the MMA work. So I enjoy CrossFit, I suppose, because it adds that dimension. I enjoy, I suppose, being, on my own with nature. So I do a relatively high amount of hiking before COVID hit. Post-COVID, I think everyone hikes now, so it's just too full. So at least in Gauteng, everyone seems to hike, so it's just too full when you go for a hike on a weekend morning. And I enjoy cinema. I enjoy movies. I'm a big movie buff. I enjoy music. I used to DJ, something hopefully as time allows next year, I'm gonna start getting back to after a number of years. So that's a bit about me. So music, getting very physical, nature, books is one thing that growing up in the township that I grew up in was sort of an escape. So I think probably buy more books than I can read at the moment, but it annoys my wife because we don't know where to store them. But yeah, that's a bit about me. That's really a bit about me. That's what those are the things I really, really enjoy. And then, except for MMA, martial arts and CrossFit, most of those stuff are very alone and individual. Gives you a space to be in my head and think and just reflect.
So you are a DJing, fighting, hiking, movie watching, love my own space type of person.
Yeah, hopefully DJing again, but yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Okay, so like I said earlier, I love your evolution into the investment space and into E4E. So what excites you most about being in the space on a full-time basis now? I'm sure that you're bumping into all types of founders, especially during COVID, needing funding. But what excites you about the space the most?
I always answer the question by saying, yeah, and it's probably going to start sounding corny pretty soon, but I think South Africa is probably the most interesting laboratory in the world to solve the world's challenges. So if you look at the diversity of issues that we have in this country as they relate to, solving issues for the underserved, for the lower middle class, for very wealthy people, if you choose to do a startup in that space, relatively advanced certain industries like financial services, insurance, particularly. I'm learning actually one of the top insurance countries in the world as I'm talking to an insurance startup. Whether you're looking at our energy challenges, whether you're looking at our transport challenges, they're the sort of challenges that if you solve for them well here, those solutions are pretty much easily implementable in other environments, right? And we're learning this also with some of the startups that we're interacting with. That understanding that I have is actually true in reality, right? So that's the one thing that truly excites me, that we can actually get South Africa to provide the world through really smart entrepreneurs or making really smart entrepreneurs, provide the world with the most amazing solutions that are going to make this world better, right? but again, with the type of investor that also cares about the social impact of our investment, made by our investee companies. So that's the one thing. And then secondly, I think the startup ecosystem, has evolved over the years, and it's now at an inflection point around providing a true example to Africa and the rest of the world around what diversity means, right? So for the first time, we're seeing a huge emphasis on Black and female founders. We're seeing a lot of them who are super bright, particularly. I was saying to one last week that black women, as well as a Black woman, I think this goes for women in general in this country, are phenomenal, right? They're super bright. They've got the right degrees. They've gone into the right corporates, whether it's McKinsey or Investec or whatever, and they've learned a hell of a lot. And we've seen some of them migrate out into the startup ecosystem. And I think the kind of solutions that their unique perspective is going to bring to this country, it's going to be, already the conversations I'm having is super, super, super amazing, right? Because if you shut out on the firstly, if you shut out 80% of your population from accessing opportunities in the startup ecosystem, there's potentially 80% opportunities that you're missing out on as a country. But secondly, if you're shutting out 50% of your population, which is women, you're also doing the same. So I think we're at a cusp. You're seeing new fund managers come in as, DAV, which is a Black woman-led VC fund. You're seeing, so I project at this pace that in the next 3-5 years, there'll be a lot more of us fund managers who are diverse, who can then start really being active around finding diverse partners. But also, there's just be a lot more capital, which I think will start attracting more entrepreneurs because they know that their chances of raising capital are probably higher. More good quality founders as well.
So in terms of that good quality founders, do you see that we have to do a lot more work to create a strong and robust pipeline? Or is this an issue for me because we're working primarily with female founders? What does it look like from a broader ecosystem perspective for you? Do we have a strong pipeline?
I say yes and no, right? So I'd say there's strong pipeline in terms of these great quality female founded or female co-founded startups that I'm seeing. And there's a few examples I can mention. We've invested in 2 companies that are female led, right? But I think I'd say no around the fact that there's not enough volume coming through, right? So I think with that said, then I think there definitely needs to be more effort to increase that volume of really good entrepreneurs and how I think we can do that is, someone's actually a lady called Tanda Yakaba from DAV said last week on a call around the narrative needs to start changing much earlier on, around, particularly in this case, because we're talking about female entrepreneurs, around what women can do, given their capabilities from a very young age. So at a school, she was mentioning about from a varsity level, start exposing, being very targeted and finding really smart entrepreneur-minded females, run competitions, provide mentoring there, so that by the time they get out of varsity, they know that actually entrepreneurship is a viable career. Because what the US has done well is that people consider entrepreneurship as a career. People go to a business school and they do an MBA with a concentration in entrepreneurship, and that's what they want to do. So I think we need to do more of that around the narrative, and the narrative not alone, but narrative plus support to indeed make entrepreneurship a viable career choice for females in this country, right? Because it's not a capability thing necessarily. So do I know I can be an entrepreneur? What are the pitfalls? What can I expect? How do I raise money? People must know much earlier, particularly in the varsity space. And then on another hand, I think there is, a greater, possibly a greater need for LPs. So, people who invest in us as funds to be less apologetic about asking us as fund managers to deploy more money into female founders, right? So I think once there is KPIs, clear KPIs of what people can be considered good or bad by their investors. And if it's one of them, people are going to start either finding them, or whether it's not enough, they're going to start, spending time a bit earlier in mentoring them before they can become investable. And then they invest in them, which then creates a snowball effect, because other female can see that, oh, so and so has raised, or maybe there's an opportunity. Let me leave Investec, and there's nothing wrong with Investec. Let me leave Accenture or whatever to go and do this thing, because it's definitely doable. And then there's programs such as yourselves, which I think are fantastic, that then capture these people as they come out of varsity or as they come out of employment, whatever stage they are, and then works with them to give them the building blocks to be in a situation later on to come to VCs. Some VCs earlier than us, but also us later on to say, this is what I've built, there's some traction I've had, this is what I've learned. Be able to even have a conversation with the VC around terms yeah. So I think there's a multifaceted plan that needs to happen. I think some of these things are happening in pockets, right? But I think as the ecosystem matures, I think there needs to be probably a much more coordinated, effort to make sure that these various programs feed into each other in a way that actually makes sense for the entrepreneurs.
And that is such an important point. I think, yes, our ecosystem is certainly maturing. And so that coordinated effort, I think we have to become more concerted around that. And so I've chatted to one of your partners, Boss, and, it's important for me that we are able to refer our female founders to you guys, but understanding, obviously, what type of boxes they need to be ticking for you guys before we even have them sit in front of you. So on that note, what do you guys look for? I keep hearing you talk about, and I'm asking this for the founders, probably asking this. I hear you talk about smart founders and MBAs and McKinsey, and I know that world. I come from that world, but there's not enough founders, I think, that come from that type of background, right? At least from the female founders that we've supported over the past 4 years. Amazing female founders, but they don't necessarily come from that background. So is that something that's important to you guys, or rather let's talk about what type of founders do you support? What do you look for?
So definitely, I think the point about MBAs, I was just making reference to the fact that there are really, really super talented females in this country who've done all of that. But despite having done all of that, they're not receiving the support that they should receive, right? Which therefore, if there's a perception created that those people who tick the boxes have done XYZ are not getting funding, can you imagine how difficult someone who's probably a really brilliant entrepreneur, because they might think, if so-and-so is not getting funding, who am I, right? But we definitely don't look at that at all. In fact, so what we look for is someone who has built a very intimate understanding of a specific problem that they're trying to solve, and in some way can demonstrate that they've thought of a solution that only they or only a few people around the world can come up with, right? So, so for instance, I'll make an example with Jessica from MemoFresh, whose business we invested in. Right, she comes from the logistics world. She's done some work for a local big retailer, so she's got some domain expertise in the area, but in her analyzing with an outsider's view of what's happening, particularly as these retailers serve township consumers, she saw a gap where she saw an opportunity of e-commerce, retail e-commerce, grocery specifically e-commerce to the township market, right? Where everyone has said, this is impossible, last mile delivery is very expensive, but she's been able to demonstrate through executing on her startup that this is possible. So, for us, I suppose the question, the first question we ask is that, is this the right entrepreneur to solve this problem, and why, right? Did they, are they a consumer of a product that's failing them as a consumer? And have they thought about a workaround? Have they, can they credibly be the person to not just raise money from us, but also lead a team as we help them build out a team over the years to solve this problem. So that's the primary thing we look for. And for us, the problem, that specific domain problem that the person is trying to fix, must be big enough that there's enough people or corporations, if it's a B2B business, who are willing to pay to see that problem go away, or to see that problem being addressed differently, right? Because that then speaks about the ability of that particular business to grow sufficiently to generate a specific return, which maybe goes to my third point. And then we look at what returns can this business generate, how fast can it grow, and. But for us, the entrepreneur is the first pillar, absolutely first pillar. Their experience, what they care about, what they can do, self-awareness, that they're aware of what they're not good at, so we can build around that and help them build a team. The second pillar is around how big is the problem and how different will society be, what once this problem is solved. And the third pillar is that will this be able to generate a return sufficiently, not just for us, but also for the entrepreneur, to make this interesting enough 5-10 years from now.
Okay. What type of checks do you guys write?
Yeah, so with all of that in mind, so we invest between 5 and 15 million rands, not dollars yet. Maybe one day we'll do that. For equity checks in businesses, so we wanna, so we don't provide debt funding or anything of that sort. We wanna be a co-owner of the business with the entrepreneur. So we are as invested as them in helping that business grow over time. So that's what we do. And that's always, because entrepreneurs think venture capitalists come in and take over your business. That's always for a minority stake in the business, so that the founders still have the majority, to have enough incentive for them to want to build this out over time. And there's no world where a VC wants to take over someone's business. We would be running businesses rather than running a fund, right? We don't have the capacity to do it. That's why we rely on the entrepreneur to steer the business. We'll help them think about where it should go. We'll help them find the right team. We'll help them think about the right doors and networks that they need to grow the business, and try and facilitate that as much as possible. But beyond that, we still want the entrepreneur to be in the driving seat as much as possible.
Okay, and what does a funding ready founder look like for you? So if you could give our founders maybe 1 or 2 tips before they even reach out to you, what are the things that they should have in place that are just non-negotiable?
Yeah. So the number of non-negotiables, given the fact that we are a Series A investor, so the entrepreneur one needs to have gone through the previous stages, so have raised some pre-seed and seed capital. That could be through an accelerator. We don't really mind. And they should need to have shown that they've used that capital to build out a product that has gone to market and is generating some real paid for traction. And then therefore how we measure that then is, the business has to have generated about R1 million worth of revenues, or have a clear path to getting to R1 million over the next couple of months. And then it needs to be requiring the capital from us to then scale that. So they've learned enough from that early traction. Okay, I need to expand geographically to generate more, or I need to improve certain things on the product before I can scale, or I need to build a sales team, or whatever it is. So there needs to be a very clear understanding of what that capital is going to be used for. With that in mind, understanding the South African ecosystem, particularly around Black and female founders, in particular for this conversation, for entrepreneurs that we think are the right sort of entrepreneur, there'll be impact and there'll be a return, but they're not at that revenue mark yet. We do, as FOE, apply our minds around spending time with the entrepreneur over a few months, providing the right mentoring, providing the right networks, making the right introductions for them to grow to a level where we can invest in them. This goes for any entrepreneur that we think is particularly talented and that their business will be sufficiently investable at the right time. You know, but I think the focus in the short term is largely on female and Black founders for that extra help. So yeah, that's how we really think of it. So investor ready is you've been through previous round, you've generated sufficient revenue at the number that I've spoken about, and there's scope for real growth, and you need the money to start unlocking that growth.
Okay, so there you have it, female founders. That's what it means to be E for E investor ready. Thank you so much for sharing those non-negotiables and deal breakers. It also helps us understand when to actually send our female founders your way. So I also love the value add though that you would journey with potential founders to get them ready. So I do appreciate that. I certainly do appreciate it.
So actually for me, that's really the key takeout. So some of the most interesting entrepreneurs that we've worked with are ones who reached out to us much earlier and say, for instance, one email we got was, I'm so and so, this is what I'm doing, this is what it does, this is a problem I'm solving. I'm not yet, based on your current investment process, I'm not ready for you guys to invest in me, but I think I will be in 12 to 18 months time. I'd like us to spend 30 minutes a month just for me to update you. And I am doing that with an entrepreneur, right? So I think the point I want to make is particularly for the right founder, meaning it's largely Black and female, but that doesn't exclude white male founders, by the way, because we want to do that as well, is we want them to reach out to us as early as possible. What that does is that by the time they invest already, we're not starting the process from scratch, right? So I want to really encourage that from you and your cohort.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so in closing, what role do you think founders should play in a post-COVID world? And I ask this as it pertains to your fund, right? So what would you be keen to invest in as you look at a post-COVID world?
Yeah, so in our experience as FOE, and I think it goes back to the point I made around South Africa being a great laboratory, is that what COVID has done for the country is just expose problems that pre-existed, right? That either the public sector or large corporates have not managed to solve yet for the country, right? And I'm a firm believer that entrepreneurs are the next cohort of people who can help solve these problems in a very creative and financially sustainable way. Because the business will be generating money, they'll be able to reinvest that and solve the problem even more. So I think the challenge to all entrepreneurs, I suppose, and the advice, I suppose, is to say we need, well, first of all, we need entrepreneurs to create that post-COVID world, right? If you think about how we live our lives now, whether us talking on Zoom or me not owning a car and Ubering around, some entrepreneur identified a problem and came up with that. So what is the world going to be like after COVID? The entrepreneurs are largely going to determine that. Obviously, from a policy perspective, government plays a role, and capital plays a role in terms of where it deploys its capital. But the entrepreneurs are going to come up and execute on the ideas that are really going to create that world. So for me, that's what an entrepreneur is. And therefore I'm expecting really, really interesting stuff to come out because of the challenge of COVID that we have. From a health tech perspective, actually, we've already invested in a health tech business that assisted in the COVID response in the country. From a agriculture value chain perspective, as providing sustainable food to make our planet more sustainable, because COVID is a result of us, well, arguably, is a result of us of how we treat nature, right? Whether you're talking about creating future jobs, which is Enabler, another investment we made around helping young people access the 4R sort of job scene. So for me, that's what I'm looking for. That's not to say start thinking of new stuff that didn't exist before COVID. Some of these problems pre-existed COVID. COVID has just highlighted them, they fast-track those issues. So I'm looking for the entrepreneurs to come in and just kick ass and solve the stuff for us. And particularly entrepreneurs with a different lens, right? Particularly entrepreneurs with different lens, such as female founders.
I love the fact that you've thrown the ball into our female founders' court and saying, that we are the ones we've been waiting for. So yes, obviously government needs to play a role in terms of regulation and policies, but it's not their role to do what we do. And I think that's what we get wrong sometimes, especially in the South African space, right? Is that we leave the responsibility to somebody else. But yes,
to someone else.
Female founders, let's take the responsibility. Let's take this bull by the horns and create the future that we want to see for our country. So if the Bushiri issue has you wilding out, what solution can you provide possibly to public sector, so to our whole security cluster, so that this doesn't happen in the future, you know? So instead of us just sitting around complaining about the fact that this thing has happened, what can you actively do as a founder right now, today, to help resolve this issue? So yeah, I think, thank you, Philani, for again throwing the ball back into our court. And I think echoing what I say to our female founders all the time is that we need to take the lead. We are the generation we've been waiting for. And yes, COVID has been an incredible catalyst, especially from a digital transformation perspective, for many of our female founders. But our new normal belongs to us. So let's own it.
Absolutely.
Let's take this bull by the horns and let's solve our issues, because it is really up to us. Thank you so much for sharing today. Gems were dropped all over the place. And I'm hoping that our female founders come and pick up those gems and run with it. Thank you, and we'll definitely be in touch. I'll be in touch as we refer founders to you that are funding and investor ready. And like we said, you know, it's going to take a concerted, coordinated effort as our ecosystem matures. So looking forward to working with you and the team.
So same here. It's been a pleasure already. So I'm looking forward to more.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.